Today we're going to focus on unit counters. Now, due to the sheer number of units in the game, it can be overwhelming for new players to memorize every single counter there is. What we'll work on today are general principles that will work across the board to help you memorize as many counters as possible without having to remember every individual one. Today's Rise of Nations tutorial was a request from Roger C in the comments section of my previous video. Sorry it's taken a while, Roger, but I hope this is what you're looking for. If any of you have any requests, please feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to oblige. Today's subject is a big one, so I will likely be splitting this up over 3 separate videos. We love Rise of Nations because it spans all of human history, and as such, the unit counters evolve as the units themselves evolve. In today's video, I'll concentrate on the earlier eras with your bows and arrows and your swords. In the next video, I'll concentrate on the modern eras with your guns and your tanks, before finally finishing with the third video with our micromanagement. Let's talk some rock, paper, scissors, shall we? Let's start with the barracks. Light infantry are weak to heavy infantry. Heavy infantry are weak to foot archers, and foot archers are weak to light infantry. There's your rock, paper, scissors. Scouts are slightly separate. They don't really attack, but they are strong against spies. Back to the rock, paper, scissors, there's a couple of ways of trying to remember this, and it is worth doing. You could try to be logical. Light is weak to heavy. That makes sense. Heavy is a bit slow, so susceptible to arrows, maybe. And the light infantry could close down on the foot archers that are lightly armoured. Again, it kind of makes sense. Another way of looking at it would be to open up the barracks and picture the control panel. Light infantry on the left, heavy in the middle, archers on the right. Those on the left are weak against those on the right. Again, it kind of makes sense. Little tricks like that can help you remember. This is worth doing because it's one of the patterns we can apply later. Now let's take a look at the stables, which is nice and easy because it's the same pattern as the barracks. The light horse is weak against the heavy horse. The heavy horse is weak against the ranged cavalry, and the ranged cavalry is weak against the light cavalry. Nice and easy. But what about looking at the barracks units versus the stables units? General rule, cavalry are strong against infantry. That makes sense, unless the infantry has a long pointy stick. That's why the heavy infantry are strong against the cavalry. You could also in general argue that ranged units are strong against melee units. Melee? Which do you say? It is more nuanced than that, but it's a good general rule. If they can't hit you. Now we must address the elephant in the room. Sorry. Elephants are basically strong against everything, but they're particularly good against heavy infantry, but weak against those pesky archers. Basically, elephants are awesome. This video isn't about hotkeys, but I thought while we're talking about the barracks and the stables, I would highlight that the hotkeys for them are the same. H is for heavy, A is for archers or the ranged units, and then G is for light. I don't know why they chose that one, but it is. Maybe remember it as being to the left of H, as it is in the control panel. Not sure on that one. Your siege units is quite a straightforward one. They're obviously strong against buildings, but they're weak against everything. Life in general, they're just made out of paper mache. But in particular, cavalry are great against them, and I believe elephants do bonus damage as well. Now we can look at the dock units. I don't like sea battles. Do you like sea battles? I don't like sea battles, but we need to be thorough. Let's do it anyway. It's a familiar pattern. Light ships are weak against heavy ships. Heavy ships are weak against fire ships, and the fire ships are weak against the light ships. The same old pattern that we've seen before. Easy to memorize. We of course have the bombard ships as well. They're kind of like artillery. They're good against buildings, weak against the world, paper mache, all of the rest of it. And now we have your support units. So your general, your scout, your spy, your supply wagon. They can't actually attack, unless you mean the scout, strong against spies, as we mentioned earlier. But generally, they can't attack, so they're not strong against anything. And they are pretty weak from anything else, but in particular ranged units. they're going to be the units that your enemy tries to pick off with their ranged units. And that's about it for support units. Next unit we're going to discuss is rather interesting. They're available in the Gunpowder Age and they're called the arquebusiers. I think that's how you say it. Now, they come from the Barracks. They are light infantry, and as such, they are strong against foot archers, as we know, or crossbowmen by that point. But they are also strong against heavy infantry. They just are. So I'm conscious we have a lot to remember by now, but arquebusiers are strong against infantry, but generally weak against cavalry. They're slow to reload, but they hit hard, and they're just very versatile. Maybe defend them from the cavalry with some pikemen, and you've got a really, really powerful combination. There are, of course, a lot of unique units within the game, which potentially gives us a whole bunch of other counters to remember, but they should sit within all of the categories that we've already discussed. And as a worst case scenario, make sure you have the detail of your game turned up, and just hover your mouse over one of these units, and it will tell you what they're strong against and what they're weak against. Something else worth discussing is the fact that units from an earlier age are weaker against units from a later age. The later age units will do bonus damage against those earlier age units, so think twice before taking on those tiger tanks with your slingers. Today we could have gone through every single counter for every single unit, but that would have been boring, and it wouldn't have solved the problem of having loads of counters for new players to remember. I hope this gives newer players a general guide to follow to make things easier, and the worst case scenario, you can just hover over each unit, and with enough detail turned on, it will tell you what they're strong or weak against. And if anything, I want your main takeaway from today to be memorizing the rock, paper, scissors approach just of the barracks can be applied across the stables and the docks, and you're already more than halfway there with all of the unit counters that you would need. I really hope you found today's video useful, and if you did, maybe check out this next one as well, and consider leaving us a like. Thank you.